Okay. My question for this video is the difference, like between how Naruto's childhood was and compared to his son's childhood is different, of course. Naruto had no parents, of course, and he grew up independently, but the big difference is how people saw him. I mean, a lot of people made fun of him, like he couldn't do shadow clone properly. Like the first time when he tried it, he couldn't infuse chakra properly. And what I liked about the story is that he strived to become what he wanted and become stronger. And clearly people could see that he was improving. Like when he learned the summoning jutsu, the Rasengan, all those things, he learned from not giving up, right? But the big difference between Boruto's generation and Naruto's generation was because in Naruto's case, people disliked him for the sake of having the nine tails. And I think the only people who realized, how good he was Iruka, it was Iruka and the rest of his classmates. They realized he was not a bad person, and just because he had the nine tails, they acknowledged him. And I think out of all the people who acknowledged him, I think Sasuke was the one who acknowledged him. And even Neji, against his fight against Neji was able to, realize that you can change your fate when he defeated him, right? It's funny, I'm playing with Neji, kid. But yeah, they were the first people to actually acknowledge, Naruto for who he was, and not because he had the nine tails. And they didn't have any sort of hatred towards him. I mean, of course, a lot of kids kind of feared him and called him names because, he had the nine tails. But people who were in his class were able to acknowledge him. And I do think that made the story really good, because that made him stronger in a way. That some people were actually, aware that he was not just the host of the Nine Tails, and that he was Naruto himself, and the Nine Tails was just a part of him that obviously he couldn't control. And that's what actually led, to him becoming the hero. But that kind of what's so interesting is how people changed so quickly. After he became the hero, people liked him, and that just said, like when I watched that episode, like when people were cheering for him, I was like, what hypocrites, they treated him horribly for so many years, and then of course he saved, their lives because he wanted to avenge his sensei who got killed by pain. Of course, people understand that. And even though, it caused him so much hardship, the village was the only home he knew. So that was his reason for fighting. But the fact that they just changed all of a sudden kind of made me think, if it wasn't for him, when I was watching the episode, like when he was fighting pain, I was like, if it wasn't for him, more people would have probably died, He came just, of course he was slightly late to, prevent the almighty push attack. But if he hadn't defeated him, and if his conversation with Nagato hadn't changed Nagato to actually use the really rebirth jutsu to revive almost everybody, Kakashi would have been dead, a bunch of other people would have been dead, Hinata included, his wife. But yeah, the way he still believed in Jiraiya, even though, it was kind of, him and Nagato took different paths. Of course, in Nagato's case, what drove him to become Pain was the loss of his friend, Yahiko. And that was at the hands of Hanzo, of course. And of course, when they, you know, explain the story of how Obito came to be Madara, they tell you, you know, Obito was the one who actually was behind everything. He manipulated him because he needed him to be able to summon the Gedo statue, which was connected to Madara's eyes, which obviously were the eyes Nagato had, as the story, you know, they explained it. And he manipulated everything, so he got manipulated easily. Naruto, he could have been in the same position, in a way. Like, if he had let his hatred towards the villagers, you know, fester so much, he could have been manipulated as easily as Nagato was. And because of him, a bunch of people were able to live again. And that in my eyes, you know, is what makes good main characters. Main characters are characters that get back up. You know, I've watched so many animes, and every time you see the main character, they lose hope for a second, and then they get back up. You know, like, that's how main characters are. But my question is right now, do you think that the way Naruto, even though he had such anger towards Nagato, he was so angry at him for, you know, killing his sensei, and he technically, Jiraiya was the only parent he'd known, the way he handled the situation, do you think it was good? You know, like, was it a good thing that, you know, he could have killed Nagato probably because Nagato couldn't move. You know, he could have been able to. He probably had enough chakra to kill him, but he didn't. They talked for a long time, which obviously changed Nagato from being, you know, bad to being able to using the jutsu to resurrect everybody who got killed in his attack. So do you think Naruto handled the situation